So there seems to be a holy trinity of equipment when it comes to single point suspensions. There's the good old climbing strap, there's the carabiner, and there's the suspension ring. Why are these three items so helpful? Why do they come up so often? In some cases, it's not always obvious why you might need additional equipment for suspensions. Like in this case, I can go straight onto the scaffolding in my room. But you'll notice that I'm having to strain a little bit to reach it. It'd be easier for me if the point was lower, so I'm going to use the climbing strap. I've now got a nice strong point that I can tie directly onto without straining. There are loads of different ways to set up this climbing strap, depending on what your intentions are. Here's just a couple of examples. However, regardless of how I set it up, I always come across a consistent problem. You can see that when I go through the climbing strap, the bite of it tightens up, which means that it's introducing friction, which means it's going to be harder for me to raise and lower the rope. To get around this issue, I'm going to add a carabiner. As you can see, I've now got a nice smooth open area that I can run rope through. I can now raise and lower an object with very little resistance. So theoretically I could use one carabiner for everything, but that doesn't work in practice. Let's see what happens when I add 4 lines to the same carabiner. By the time I get to the last line, it's become really hard to position the rope. And things get even worse when I come to move on the lines I've already placed. Very quickly I get a jam. At this point, the purpose of the suspension ring becomes a lot more obvious. I'm using the same number of lines, but as you can see, each has its own space, and when I come to raise and lower the lines, they don't generate as much friction as before, making it a lot safer. It's worth pointing out that you don't always need the carabiner. In fact, if you just make a second lark's head out of the climbing strap, that gives you a way of holding the ring. However, having a carabiner does allow you to do more flexible things with the setup of the climbing strap. So if you're going shopping for this stuff, what should you be looking out for? Let's go back to the climbing strap. When picking the right length of climbing strap, remember that the size sold refers to the length when pulled end to end. So this climbing strap is a 30cm climbing strap because it's 30cm when you pull it from end to end. The length does not refer to the circumference. It's really important to check that your climbing strap has a kilonewton rating on it. A kilonewton is a measure of force. In this case, 22 kilonewtons is equivalent to around 4,800 pounds. Obviously, you're never going to suspend that amount of weight. However, it is a guarantee from the manufacturer that it was specifically made to take an incredible amount of force. Once you've got your climbing strap, make sure you inspect it on the regular. Keep an eye out for frays, snags, and make sure the stitching hasn't started to come undone. Retire anything you're suspicious of. Carabiners are used for everything from climbing to keychains to home improvement, so make sure it's an actual climbing carabiner that's made to take a load. A climbing carabiner will have a set of kilonewton ratings on the side. If you're wondering why there's 3 separate kilonewton ratings, it's referring to the carabiner's strength being pulled from end to end, being pulled from side to side, and being pulled from end to end with the gate open. There's loads of different types of climbing carabiners, and I'm going to recommend a few in the show notes. In the meantime, whatever you get, check that the gate works well, check that the surface remains nice and smooth, and if it has a lock, make sure the lock remains functional. This brings us nicely onto the suspension ring. This is a stainless steel O-ring or mooring ring. It's above a centimetre in thickness and about 20 centimetres internal diameter. It has a braking load of just under 6,000 kilograms. This isn't as easy to get hold of as other components on this list. I got it from a specialist maker of stainless steel components. Because of how much they weigh, shipping is extortionate, so I tend to order them in bulk for students. If you know of any good sources for them, please let us know in the comments. Remember that the climbing strap, carabiner, suspension ring combo is far from the only game in town. There's lots of other ways you can suspend people. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, consider supporting us on Patreon. We have loads of extra videos and goodies over there, and it's a great way of keeping this channel going and supported. Thank you very much. And if you're interested in suspension, you might like this video about the bones and rope hip harness. Thank you, bye bye.